Welcome back to the Daily Edge. I'm here with my brothers, TJ and Todd Daly. And today we've got an interesting topic. Recently there was the LA Marathon. They, due to, I think, extreme heat, had decided to just allow people to run 18 miles versus the 26 miles and still get the medal. And so I think, there's a lot in that. It's not just about getting the medal and running short and different things, but it's almost like a mindset thing. So I'm going to kick this over to TJ. We're going to dive in.
Yeah, I think this is going to get a little redundant because we've talked about this topic a lot, but I think, what this outlined for me was interesting. So this happened and I had a visceral reaction to it. I think we've all been through it in the past where there was this period of time over the last decade where everybody talked about the participation trophy generation. Call it mid to late millennial generation, which is kind of right after ours, conveniently, where, it was a lot about, hey, you tried, here's a participation trophy. And, you can say what you want about people that grew up in those environments, whether it was positive or negative, right? In certain instances, I'm sure it was positive. It gave somebody confidence they may not have had or made them feel like they were part of a community. And then on the flip side, potentially it put them in a position where they expected to get everything without really trying. And I think this is kind of an interesting example. So when this happened, I had this reaction like, oh, this is awful. And I had seen somebody who had posted on Instagram and their perspective on it was, why do you care? For me, I didn't care about the actual act. Like if one of you ran 18 miles and you wanted to go get a medal for finishing 26, fine. Doesn't bother me, doesn't affect me one way or the other. Not going to change my day-to-day. So in that regard, I don't care. My issue was more with the race director, meaning the directors of the LA Marathon, where I thought instead of, because you said extreme heat, like it was extreme in a very, very loose usage of the word. I think it was supposed to get into the high 70s. And we've seen marathons, we've seen races well into the 80s, 90s. And instead of offering people an on-ramp, right, more fluid at the aid stations, keeping the finish line open, like New York Marathon does that, right? They close the course down, but if it takes you 12 hours, they'll keep the finish line open for you. You're gonna have to get there, but they will. So keep the finish line open, add more fluids, and instead it was, if it's too hard, just cut it out at 18. And I think that just contributes to society as a whole justifying the easy way out. So I'd be interested to hear your guys' take.
I'm going to take devil's advocate on this because I did also hear the same thing and I rolled my eyes. And as I try and do often, and as I've tried to lobby for on many of these episodes, is like, be curious about why this happened. Here's my understanding is, and I'm going to put myself in the race director's shoes. And I think part of the challenge here is that marathoning and long races has become much more recreational. I feel like the interest has climbed into more recreational runners. It's no longer kind of people who are predominantly elite or very experienced runners. You have a lot of people kind of trying to get into the marathon circuit that may not have, where running's maybe not a huge focal point of their life. And so I think as a race director, that increases the risk of things going wrong, right? In particular. So when you've got, I don't know how many thousands of people run the LA Marathon. I'm guessing several thousand would be my guess, give or take.
Maybe 10. I don't know. It's not the biggest, but it's big.
So 63 at race start, and that the highs that day were in the upper 80s.
Okay.
87, 88 degrees. My understanding is the decision was a one-time thing. This isn't indefinite like future races you can peel off at 18 miles. But if you're a race director and you're thinking about people's health, safety, whatever, now particularly people who are running marathons are already masochists and are not necessarily great at drawing the line and saying, okay, I'm done. So here he's got an opportunity to say, okay, one time I am going to allow these people an off ramp at 18 miles that gives them an opportunity to have a little bit of, from an overall effort perspective. Those of us that have run marathons in the 60s and 70s know 18 miles, and that can very compare to 26 in, much cooler conditions. That one time, offer these people an opportunity to maybe take a way out that doesn't lead to somebody having maybe a severe health condition or it being fatal. So what is it really, the question I want to pose back to you guys, because I hear this a lot in business, where you do one thing and then everybody kind of panics and is like, well, if you give that one person that one piece of flexibility, then everybody's going to want that flexibility. And then, oh my gosh, and then it's just going to be chaos and everything's going to crumble around us because you gave that one person that flexibility. So this seemed to be a very exception-based one-off scenario where I don't know that it drastically or more broadly impacts the spirit of the sport. I'd throw that out to you guys.
I don't know how to answer that, but what I was thinking is, when should the race director get involved? I think this is where at what point, because the whole point of a marathon is to push yourself past limits, right? 18 to 26 are arguably the hardest. You've trained for it, and that's where people go into their deepest dark places to try to do. They're doing a marathon because they're trying to prove to themselves that they can do something that is really, really hard. So like the whole point and process around allowing someone an opportunity to do something great versus giving them an opportunity to take it away. So I'm curious, like, there are instances, and it could be tornadoes, there hail, there could be some, like, outside of people getting super injured through like a weather storm. Why would a director take that away due to heat? When a runner can take that away themselves, they have the opportunity in order to do that.
I think it's tough for people to know what their limits are, especially in a heat stroke type scenario. Let me ask you this:
when is it on them versus him? When is it on the director versus the person?
I don't think it is. I don't think there's a clear line of responsibility. I think here's the other side of this, and this is all hypothetical. This isn't like this wouldn't have happened. If someone, let's just say they don't do this off ramp at 18 miles, right? They don't offer the pedals. Someone pushes themselves, a recreational runner that maybe doesn't understand their body or their limits as well, and they die. Mm-hmm. Okay? Let's just say it's one person. Mm-hmm. One person dies in the process. If that were the alternative, you have one person loses their life, or you offer for this one race at high 80 degrees, you offer people medals at 18. If you're a race director, which do you choose? Do you choose everyone having to go the full 26 and not compromising the integrity of the race, or one person's life?
I choose the prior, and here's why. It's on them. When you sign up for a marathon, you must be over 18 years of age and you sign a waiver. You know what you're getting into. Point being, how many people died at the Mini last year? 2. It happens. I'm not trying to be like very, like there are scenarios where something, there's because then you're on a slippery slope, right? Because then, a lot of these deaths, I think it was one or two of them, but anyways, a lot of these deaths are unknown heart conditions. So do you make everybody take a heart stress test before they run a marathon? Or there's some other genetic condition that they're predispositioned to this particular scenario. So do you have to start testing for that? I think with these scenarios, from a race director's perspective, that's why when you run any of our ultras, there's a waiver. Like, you're signing this. I've signed actual waivers for certain ultras where, and it's a little tongue in cheek, but it's real, where they say death is a potential here. I have Gnawbone, I think, puts their waiver on the shirt itself. And it's like, I understand that death is a possibility. Point being is that, like, that particular race, I've actually run a race, grandma's in 2018 maybe, and it was 63 at the start. So similar. And I know, and I bet if you looked, if it was 87, it was probably 87 at 4 p.m. Not, because the race, I'd love to look, but from what I heard, the peak temperature for most of that race was in the 70s somewhere. And that's a substantial difference between 75 and 90. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was 63 at the start and maybe it rose. I
think the challenging thing here is like the marathon was created. I don't know why it's created, but I'm going to say it's this grit hard thing, right? In a world of AI where we're taking shortcuts on absolutely everything, to take something with is so hard and so demanding physically and to create a shortcut, I think is where you're like, there's not a shortcut to the marathon. When it's 60 degrees isn't easy. When it's 40 degrees, it isn't easy. And so there's this like call it the holy grail, this really hard thing to do. And in these really hard things, there is risk. And there shouldn't be concessions unless it's life-threatening to everybody involved.
Well, and there's precedent here too, right? Like Chicago has been black flagged at least twice where, it's gotten, because it's in October, right? Where it's gotten into the 80s. They've run out of water at the aid stations and it is what it is. You come back and you try again. I had a buddy who did an Ironman in Texas and there was a tornado and they shut the finish line down. And he was 10 meters from the finish line. Didn't give him his finish. 10 meters. Like 10 to 50 meters away, and they didn't give it to him. So what does he have to do? I got to go back and try it again. I've got to do another Ironman. And it sucks, and it's tough, and, but I think you're right. The larger picture is, okay, how do we foster the desire to go grit? Like, we didn't make it, let's go do it again. Or we had to walk it in, maybe next time we'll run the last
We had it happen to us. What did we do at Disney? We did Dopey. Dopey, it's a 5K, so it's 4 days in a row. The hardest part, by the way, is getting up at 3:30 every morning. It's 5K. The next day you wake up, you're on a 10K. Next day you wake up, you're on a half. Next day you wake up, you're on a full. Day 3, half marathon. I don't remember if we ran a few miles or whatever, but it got canceled. What did we do?
We went out and ran the half marathon.
We ran circles in the parking lot, right? With a bunch of hundreds of other crazy people, because I would not dare take a Dopey medal or wear a Dopey shirt without doing the total 78 some miles.
I think they reduced it down to a 10K again.
But then we did the other 7 miles in the parking lot. That is the mentality that we have to have. And I think your point is like, if we take the grittiest things out there and start creating shortcuts for those, what are we doing to society as a whole?
It's interesting. If I asked you guys if they did that for a 5K, you probably wouldn't have as much issue with it. Is that fair?
Probably.
Yeah. And I think part of that is where I'm going with the marathon. Certainly the 5K and the marathon are still worlds apart, but I think your grit, your true tests of physical limits and capabilities, a lot of that's moved into the ultra world for your more experienced runners. I think the marathon community 20, 30 years ago, even maybe 15 years ago, is now your ultra marathon, trying to run 50Ks, trying to run 50 milers, trying to run 100 milers, or running big backyard ultras and trying to do, and I think, your half marathons and your marathons, so that's where I think it gets a little bit more complex. It did say mid 80s was likely around noon to early afternoon.
So that's probably your what?
4+ hour.
4+ hour people.
Yeah.
But
which
still,
is your higher risk.
Sure.
Population in general. So,
and I would bet you, I bet you less than 100 people took that medal.
Yeah,
I mean, agree. I would think for the most part, anybody that's gone through that process, with the 5K, I mean, I think it goes, I think you're right, because I do believe that a lot of 5Ks in instances are done for entertainment purposes. For sure. But I mean, you guys remember when we went to Disney, and I think I was talking about it earlier.
High five, everybody.
Like we went to the Disney cruise, and there was the 5K on the island that I won, by the way. they said in the pre-meeting, you don't even have to run it. You can just go get your medal at the stand. You can just walk over and get your medal. I don't know if anybody did that, but
is the real challenge that you like these really gritty things, whether it's a marathon, a 50K, like you can't change the bar. You can't, regardless of who's competing, regardless of where we're at, like regardless if it's recreational, like we're not going to make an Ironman and cut it in half. We've already, gone from a full to a half marathon. I imagine half marathons weren't. I saw something Daniel Tosh said. Now, what is this with this half marathon? Like, yeah, like I'm going to tell people like I read half a book and like I'm never going to pick it up again. Like who does half of anything, and had this big joke about it. But we've created a society where half is good.
That's the biggest question. I like your perspective, both of your perspectives on it. This is the biggest question for me. Why do we, or are we at a position in society where we are constantly giving people off ramps where we're even, I've probably been guilty of it, where we're like justifying, we have this rule at backyards. Don't bring your mom to a backyard. You don't want somebody after yard 4 to be like, oh honey, you did so good. Great job. It can be done. The first time you came to me when your legs hurt, I didn't say, oh dude, you did great today. Way to get through 50K. Like it's cool. You got to ultra, and I think that applies down the line when you had John reach out to you years ago and say, I want to run a marathon. And you're like, here's your on-ramp. Not, dude, you're 60 pounds overweight. Like, maybe get into walking and, whatever. So I'd love your perspective on why are we justifying the off-ramps versus like, hey, here's a way to get into this that could make your life better.
I think it's too hard. I think for the majority of the population, it's too hard. Now, my first long run was the marathon. I didn't start with a half. The first thing we did was monumental, and it was like, halves became easy. So you could like run a half without training and like, let's do halves. But like the marathon is still a monster and I still don't love them. Like there's something about it. You guys got Boston right around the corner. And I would rather run the 50K than the marathon. I hate 26 miles of high intensity, and I haven't. So the marathon hurts. It always hurts every time, and people want to get a medal that doesn't hurt. And I think society as a whole, we've created such, I think the conveniences in life have gotten so good that we have to continue to create things to create adversity. Like I'm getting a cold plunge because everything's so easy. Now I got to find a way to go sit in a frozen tub because I'm spending some time on my couch, or, I don't have to go to the outhouse in the middle of the winter to use the restroom anymore. We don't have to do the normal things that our ancestors did that provided grit. So now we're fabricating those through, I don't care whether it's through the high rocks or the whatever it's called, or running long distances. We're all trying to create some of that adversity to still make us feel tough.
Society's gone super soft, and I think it's going to continue in that direction as we get more conveniences and comforts. We just that's an inevitable reality. All of that you said there was 100% true. We are much softer as a society than we've ever been, and we will continue that trajectory for the foreseeable future.
So, kind of going back to it from a. So, let me say that was kind of my perspective on this whole thing. And I feel bad now saying, at the beginning of this, that everybody can just die. It's on them. I'm not that, it's not that black and white and that cut and dry, but I do feel like accountability is important.
There's rules. You run 2 races, Prairie on Fire. If you're not in the corral, you're out. Mm-hmm. Like it's just what it is. I joke, my kids, their grades and their homework, they can literally turn an assignment in like anytime. Oh yeah, I'll just make that up. I'll turn that in, or they can do bonus work. There literally is no more deadline. Like, oh, that paper was due and it's due on a Tuesday and it's in on a Tuesday. It's like, I didn't get it on Tuesday, but they'll let me turn it in on Thursday or Friday. Like there's very, very few finite things that have to be done in a set time. And this takes me to an off topic that we're going to hit, that I want to hit, and I want your guys' opinion on it. Punctuality. Showing up on time. And this is why this is important. So I'm helping coach a basketball team for my youngest son. And like, as being the coach and being there, it's like, I'm there 20, 30 minutes early, right? Because, I mean, you got a basketball game, you got to show up, you got to get loose, you got to do things. Punctuality. And then in soccer, show up like, I feel like it's become the norm that if practice is at 6, we show up at 6 or we show up at 5:58. And I think that happens in kids' sports. I think it happens in our lives. What are your guys' thoughts around punctuality these days and what the norm is in your life versus what it should be?
I think it's really interesting. I've thought a lot about this, strangely enough. We joke a lot about people who are, as they get older, like our dad. He'll show up to a flight 3 hours before the flight, or he gets to a Colts game 2 hours before a Colts game. So I think some of the punctuality happens naturally because you're exposed to more context. And so when you're going down to a Colts game, he's thinking of the 17 things that can go wrong, which never go wrong. And ultimately he's the first person in the stadium. But if it's a situation where there aren't a lot of those variables, like I'm on board with you, there are times. Last night I told you I would be at your house around 7:15, and I'm like, we decided last minute we're going to come to Marion, and so we're scrambling, and I'm like, pushing, but it's like, okay, do I lose it because everybody's not moving as fast as I want, or do I show up 5 or 6 minutes late, which I did. I think I was 7 or 8 minutes late at the end of the day. Similarly this morning, we were running and like I got there 3 minutes early and I'm all proud of myself. Again, different scenario because it was 6 a.m. I'm not showing up 20 minutes early at 6 a.m., but ended up being late because I didn't read my texts. But it's important, I think, to be there early. I had a run last night where I was there 10 minutes early. Miles, he goes to his practices 20 to 30 minutes early, games 20 to 30 minutes early. And punctuality to me is extremely important because I think it conveys, at least to me, the way I read into it. And I'm sure it's not intentional most times, but I read into it as a person's respect for the other person's time. And when somebody just throws caution to the wind, I will give certain people grace. But like that grace is variable. Like if I know they're going to be 7 minutes late every time, I'll just show up a little bit late myself. And I know that it's something. But if it's 7 minutes once and then 30 minutes once and then they no show, like I'm done. Like that's the kind of behavior that I'll just shut somebody down. Like I don't need somebody like that because you obviously don't respect me or my time.
Yeah, for me, I think it depends on the situation as well. I'm trying to think of the things that I'm intentionally punctual to and make sure we get there on time. Like kids' sporting events is something we're always there on time. I think about
what's on time.
When the coach asks you to be there, which is generally 15 to 30 to 40 minutes ahead of the game. So
is that a typical thing for practice though too? Do you guys show up to practices 10 to 15 minutes early, or are you walking
we show up
in?
To practice 30 minutes early because that's Miles. Like he wants to be the first person there, so I just he's got that agency, and so
not practice. Practice generally we're there before it starts. We're generally there
walking in 3-4 minutes before it starts.
Yeah,
just walking in and going.
We're normally more 5 to 7.
Yeah, I would say 3 to 4 on that front. Like mass, it's very important for me to be on time to mass. I do not like to walk into church late. I would say some things, I think where I struggle at times is in the work setting when I've got back-to-back meetings. So what's tough is it's not just like, hey, I'm showing up because I, was just doing whatever. It's usually a meeting's running over, right? And you get into a conversation with somebody who's trying to express something to you or is trying to, you get in that towards the end of a conversation and you don't want to like hard cut them off. You want the conversation to end smoothly, depending on the topic too. You want to try and thoroughly get through the conversation. That's where I run into issues. And for me, in the work setting, especially with virtual meetings, a lot of times it's like you're just sitting on there cranking, doing whatever you would be doing if you didn't have a meeting anyway. And so for me in those cases, I'm generally not super sensitive to someone being 2 to 3 minutes late. Once it hits 5 minutes, that's kind of my radar in like a business setting that like, okay, so if someone at least then text me and let me know you're going to be 5 minutes late, you can stop and do that. So in the, in-person meetings, I would generally agree 100%. I think if it's an in-person meeting in a group, unless there is an extenuating circumstance, and depending on if there's a meeting prior to that that's in person, I mean, that's where I think it gets fuzzy for me. But just I'm one that also, I will say, and you guys know this, tries to maximize my time. I try and fit a lot in. And so generally, I'm not somebody who's going to build 15 minutes of buffer in between everything. Although I've had to do that on my schedule, in meetings at 50 minutes after the hour. So I can, so it's one of those things where I pack my schedule a little tighter, but I would say that's where I'm at on punctuality.
I think the virtual stuff has made it more common to like show up meetings at 3, you come right into the virtual meeting right at 3. Mm-hmm. Like if you show up at 2:55, nobody's there and you're just kind of waiting. It really is interesting because it does send a similar message to me of importance. It's like most important person is the one that's, always doing something or always late, or it almost conveys a lack of importance or a lack of respect for time. And it's hard because I think it's become the social norm. I think more than anything it's like it's a social norm of like, it's okay, meeting starts, it's okay to be 2, 3, 5 minutes late. Practice starts, everyone's walking in during practice, and it just has become the norm. Now, I would say on the flip side, if practice runs over 5 or 10 minutes, nobody really cares either. But it's just it's almost a mentality thing, because since we started coaching, I've had to we leave 30 minutes before to get there 20 minutes before, and I'm used to leaving 15 minutes before and getting there 5 to 7 minutes before. But you got to get your cleats on if it's soccer. You've got to get so I don't know why, but that's one of those things that bothers me too. It's like punctuality creating, and it goes back to this busy, active world I think we live in. We're trying to all do so much and so many things, and if we could just slow down, I think there's a lot to be gained in those moments that we can create, and showing up on time for things.
Well, I think it also, there's this element of value and prioritization. So you talk about these practices. I mean, I know that for me, and again, I'm glad that Miles has chosen to approach soccer practice the way he has, but for me, there's value there, right? Like, you're getting the opportunity to practice with some coaches that played at a very high level, or that have been coaches for over a decade and have great experience there. And if you really value that, then you will show up on time, because it's an opportunity for you to get better, but on the flip side of it, there are, I think you're right. We've created so many almost meaningless interactions that, we maybe accidentally prioritize over something more valuable. I'll give you an example. For me, there's a meeting that we have every week, 2 a week, and most of the time I show up late, intentionally. It's a meeting that starts at a little bit after noon and typically runs for 25 to 30 minutes, but it is a twice a week full company update. So you have 40 people giving 5-minute updates as to what they're doing that week. And 80 to 90% of it is kind of like you said, when you're in a virtual meeting, you're just kind of doing things away anyway. So it's like, it would be, I think there could be some real soul searching and self-exploration on, I think we've talked maybe before about these, I think you've got a pretty strong philosophy on these pointless meetings that we have. And so cutting some of that out, how many times are we, not how many, but every now and then I'll find myself wanting to finish a video or wanting to finish a game before I leave for somewhere. And I normally cut it off, but most of that and a lot of that stuff could probably be cut out. I'd be really interested to see, the people that are walking into basketball practice at 6:10 for a 6:00 practice. What were you doing? What was that real? Like, could you not find cleats, or did you want to finish an episode of
kids either? It's the parents.
For sure. That's what I'm saying.
They're just, they're just kind of going and like they've lost. I'm curious, like less meetings is kind of like less, like how do you receive that? Like, well, if I didn't try to jam so much in there, then I wouldn't feel so rushed, and I don't want to feel rushed.
I think it's easier, depending on what your daily scope of responsibility is. I mean, I'm big on prioritization, and I think different meetings hold different levels of importance for different people based on what their responsibilities are, right? So there's probably 5 people that's a really important meeting to. Whether that's the company leadership who's wanting to get informed on everything. There's others that are important. Like for me, my most important meetings are the ones generally one-on-ones with my employees where I am helping remove roadblocks. We're brainstorming. We are talking about day-to-day blocking and tackling and making sure the organization can run, right? Like to me, those are like top. I think there are... For you, it is like the Monday morning meeting, right? Is like this. That is your time to get updated on things, to share your thoughts on things. And I think naturally that makes sense because of your role in the organization, right? You're not doing as much of the day-to-day blocking and tackling. So if you have, for example, one meeting on your calendar for the day, like that's your centerpiece. Whereas for me, a lot of times we go in there and we're just kind of, talking and kind of, just kind of shooting the breeze, or we're just, and just kind of, and in my head, it's piling up. And we've talked about this, like I got a lot of things piling up in the back of my head trying to make the organization run day to day. And so I think, that's a meeting I'm generally on time to, so I wouldn't say like that's one I show up intentionally 3 minutes late because it's not important, but I do think based on the volume of meetings you have and the volume of activity that's going on, I think that can change the landscape of things. Like, for example, we talk about Dad all the time, right? When he has to do laundry and has a haircut and has a doctor appointment on the same day, it is a full day. And that is packed and whatever. And each one of those things is very important because he's planned around it, and that's what he's doing. And that's the slow, and I think there's some beauty in that for sure. I'm continuing to try and declutter my life. So philosophically, I agree with everything that's being said here. I also think that there is other perspectives. For us, comparatively, we're trying to, even those of us that live slower, there's still infinitely more things to get done in a day that can be done. And
it's always something to do.
For us, like when I think about practices, right, I think about urgency and importance. What makes a practice such a high priority is the time of it, right? You got to be there on time. This is the time, and that creates a sense of urgency. Our kids, the reason, they're pretty packed athletically. Their training schedules are pretty full. Most days they have something going on. And so for us, that event is more of a casual experience than it is like the centerpiece of a day that we're like, okay, we got practice in 30 minutes or we got practice in 45 minutes. We're once a week or twice a week. Like we've got to start getting ready for that. It's like, we're just coming in from this and we're going out on this, and it's a little more fluid. We still get there on time, but again, it's 2 or 3, maybe 4 minutes, not 5, 10 or 15.
I think you bring up a good point. It's like, we talk about letting the day breathe a little bit and not being as packed. And I always find myself kind of exploring the value of what I'm doing with my time. Like, we talk a little bit about, our responsibilities to our children, our responsibilities professionally, and some of those things. And so, there are days where, oh gosh, what was it? It was this week. I had a couple hours worth of calls, and would I like to take those calls in front of my computer so I can look at screen shares and view spreadsheets and download files? I absolutely would. But, the value that I think I'm bringing to my kids, keeping them consistent, giving them, letting them essentially play with their friends, because that's a lot of what sports are at this age. I feel like utilizing my time in that capacity. Okay, well, I'm going to sacrifice being as present as I probably could potentially be. Now, if it's something major, right? If we have a major strategy meeting with a major partner or something, then I'm parked. But I always find myself analyzing that situation and being like, look, yeah, I could sit on that meeting that I explained earlier for 35 minutes and listen to a bunch of people talk about a bunch of stuff that isn't relevant to me. Or I could be playing basketball with my son during lunch, because it's right during lunch, to keep him engaged during spring break or something like that, or make him feel like, he's got somebody to play with because his sisters have friends over. So it's very interesting to me how we evaluate and prioritize those particular things in those scenarios. And I wonder, I don't know, I'll kind of pause there and get your guys' thoughts, because I have more on it. But
Well, if you go back 30 years to when we were in sports, this is where it gets real interesting. We were always early to everything because there was nothing else to do there. And so it makes you wonder, especially around the sports, not the business world, but like, man, they didn't have the cell phones and the video games, and the television wasn't on demand. And so it was like, they got home and yeah, there was dinner and but your whole thing was revolved around just that activity. And so, well, now it's like, I can sit at home and be distracted and entertained. And so it's like, you take 30 years down the road, there's so much more access. There's so many more things to do, but you just wonder how much of that is like legitimate. I'm going from practice to practice type stuff. I'm just got a lot going on, versus like sitting in my chair on my phone, or like now even like most parents, when they go to practice, they'd watch the practice. Now they sit in their car or sit whatever, and they play games or Candy Crush or whatever just to pass the time away, right? So it's like, I wonder how much of it is distraction versus importance. I think that's where I would be more curious, because it seems to be a generational thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a lot of thoughts on it. The other thing that I kind of mentioned in terms of the fluidness is I do think with kids, you've got to be, they're not going to naturally be prepared at the time for practice. And so there's a level of stress and anxiety that needs to be injected into a situation in a lot of cases to get someplace on time or ahead of time, or you've just got to be very, very thoughtful. And like at 30 minutes, you're like, hey, and at 20, hey, and like, for better or worse, we don't tend to have as good of that kind of advanced awareness on everything that's going on. And so we sometimes will forego injecting that additional stress into a situation, and be there a couple of minutes early than 5 to 7 or 10.
I was just say, what's interesting in our family since we shut off the internet is like, Isaiah's like ready to go to practice. He's like ready to go, excited. Like, hey, Dad, can we leave yet? We've shown up a couple of times 30 minutes prior, just because he's so bored, ready to get out of the house, wants to go shoot shots.
Let me ask you this. You show up to most things 30 minutes early, give or take. The other day we met in the Indianapolis office, and you said I'll be there at 7:30. I said I'll be there at 7:30, and you texted me at 6:50, and you were in the parking lot. How often do you feel like when you're 30 minutes early and someone's not there until 5 minutes early that they're late because you're 30 minutes early? Like, how tough is that to process? You feel like I'm here, I'm ready. Where is everyone at?
I think if they're still early, they're early. I think it shows a level of importance and a level of thoughtfulness of what's going to be talked about or what's in the meeting, preparedness. You can tell when someone just walks in off the cuff and they're like, you're sitting in the first 5 minutes and they're still checking things and doing things. Drives me absolutely crazy. Like there's a cell phone policy. If I'm talking and you're on your phone, like I'll stop the meeting. Like it just, It's like, dude, if what I'm saying isn't important, then just tell me. Oh, well, I this important, whatever. And I'm like, no, like I'm not. So I'm okay if people are still early, but when it gets after the time, like I value my time considerably, and I can be just as busy as anyone else out there. I've got just as much going on. I can throw myself into just as many things and get just as much tied up, and I just choose not to because I want to go into the meetings that I have are highly, highly important with people that I highly, highly value. And I want to have that time because I don't, and I'm seeing more and more of it. I don't get much of it. I don't get you, but like 2 hours on a Monday. And that's fine. That's good. But like, it's like when I'm meeting with you in person, I value that time. I'm going to give you that same respect and I just want it back. So I do love being early. And I have found being early, there's for other people that are early, it creates those moments. It's like sitting in the parking lot with your kid before practice and you start having these just conversations like about, it gives you that space to have some moments and to have some discussions that you wouldn't have when you're all coming in. Okay, we're here. Let's go. Let's get in the board. It's like there's these moments of like building trust and personal, time. How's your family? It just allows space for that human element.
Well, that brings up a great point. As you age, do we think that? Because again, you're right. You look at Dad, and like those are big things for him. Do you start to recognize the importance of those moments and look to let everything breathe to its absolute maximum just in case you were to encounter things like that? Is that why, because I think most people are like that. There are people that stay present, stay busy, relatively speaking, but and I'm finding this with myself, I'll be 47 in a week. Jeez. That I'm starting to let those things breathe a little more. And maybe it's because I want more of those experiences, or maybe it's because, I'm seeing the value in it. Because you're right. Like when I go to Miles's practices, which I go to most of them, they're right at the end of my workday. So his practices, if they start at 5, we're there at 4:30. And for him, he has those moments, right? I'm not talking to him very often, but he's playing pickup with his friends pre-practice. And like, that's what he enjoys more than anything. And for me, I find so much value in staying present during practice. I sit on the fence and I watch so that we can talk about his wins or, it's that fine balance, as they all say. You don't want to keep their attention while they're out there playing. You want them to look at the coach and listen to the coach, not you. But, I think the value in showing them that you're paying attention, that you care, that you're giving your time to ensure that they're progressing or that they have somebody supporting them. Like I see the value in that. So I guess that's a two-part question. Do you think this is something that happens naturally as we age, as we get over the personal? As we get over generating value from doing tactical stuff and we get more into the experiential human connection thing, is that why we start to let things breathe more? And then I guess let's start there.
It's a tough balance. Productivity over like space and allowing some like, it's a really tough balance. I find to you similar when we show up early, they're playing knockout on the basketball court and they're just, high-fiving and doing stuff like, creating space for stuff to naturally develop, I think is super, super important, but it's hard for us to value it because it's not very productive in the sense of things that we all look at things. So that's where I won't cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, I think presence is whatever you're doing. Being able to be present during that, I think, is a little bit of a lost art that we've, as a society, I think, need to figure out how to get better at. I have found that space for me is not necessarily valuable for the sake of space, but I'm finding as I get older, I have a more limited capacity to be truly productive. I can tactically go through emails for 12 hours a day, but I found like when I was in China for 11 days and when I engaged on work things, particularly the flight out, and then when I would engage an hour or two a day, my quality and level of thinking during that hour or two was much higher than what it typically is when I'm packing more things in. So I think there's nothing wrong, I think, with productivity. I think it's just making sure that we're healthy enough mentally to actually be. I think sometimes we can think we're more productive than we are if there's not enough space to recover and recharge in between. That being said, it'll be interesting, so I think for me, that is what has pulled me back from where I have found progress there. That's what's pulled me back from kind of a supercharged day. I mean, even I think back to I think it was 21 or 22 when I was doing basically the only person on Premium Logic, and I was doing YouTube Lego videos every, couple of months. And like, I mean, it was.
Did you see the new Lego set that's coming out?
Bananas. I mean, no, I haven't.
It's like the largest set ever. It's a 12,000 piece like Catholic cathedral.
Really?
I'll show it to you later. Comes out June 1st.
Fantastic.
I'll make sure to get
Return
you one
to
on Lego Insiders.
Yeah, I've got a few. I've got the Hogwarts completed.
I'm telling you, that's a great.
Kay come over and do she was the one who initially requested that.
Yeah, that channel actually, you were getting some traction. Like that was a really
I'm
good
going to
channel.
need to put those QR codes up in my Lego museum.
They'll have maybe 700 subscribers, 800
That's great.
subscribers. It was pretty fun. Yeah, so I think presence is something that is important, but I also am wired a little bit differently. I am more purpose-driven, and so I think people, it'll be interesting to see as I age if I shift out of that with age, or, because I feel like not that me personally is benefiting from whatever I'm trying to accomplish, because I would say, you guys know this, 20 hours of the work that I do on a weekly basis is complimentary. I make no money, and, it is not benefiting me or my family really in any particular way, but it's like there's a mission there that I'm very aligned to, and that's very motivating for me, and to be able to leave the world better off than I found it is a very important aspect of my existence for me. It's less about, did I enjoy this moment? It's less about how happy I am or how much I'm enjoying or the convenience or comforts of, I think emotional connection's important. You guys know I do the quarterly trips with the boys. So some of that it's a little different. I take them to school a couple of days a week and shuttle them to a lot of their practices, and we get conversations in the car. So for me, those are important things, and I've found different ways to prioritize and make sure that interaction happens. And it's just a balance. I think we all are going to kind of balance things a little bit differently based on how we're oriented, because I probably very rarely, I do when I'm making a 45-minute trip, like to Noah's AAU practice, I'm sitting and watching. Sometimes I'll be doing some work, but I very rarely will sit at their practices and watch, right? It's like I'm dropping them off, and I'm thinking like they value the fact that I'm spending most of my evenings taking them or picking them up from whatever they're doing, and that's kind of how they feel or seen supported. So yeah, I think some of that does change with age, and some of it's orientation.
Yeah, for me with Miles, he's just at that age,
He's
at
young.
7,
Yeah.
where I think he really notices, and he's communicated that out loud. Like when not as many people go to his games or whatever, it matters. So I don't want to set expectations that it's always going to happen. And Kay's even at times, you always watch Miles, so I'll go to one of her practices or 2 of her practices a month or something like that to make sure she knows. But I'm also at every one of her track practices, at least off season stuff. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just an interesting thing. It's like I'm finding so much more value, and I get so much more out of, like, I'll have 2 days a week where it's packed, where it's like a bunch of tactical stuff and it's just, run through. But then there's other days a week where it's like 7 things. It's like hour meeting here, hour meeting here, hour meeting here, a couple big project updates. But again, like, I think you build so much, the ability to optimize. You build that out over the years, and you know exactly where to go and exactly who to go to for what needs to get done, to make certain things happen. And it just doesn't take as much time anymore. But I'm finding so much more value in just, I take the kids to school every day. And sometimes it's even conflict in the car, especially with the young ones because they're going to school together and there's more opportunity for that. Or I'll take Kay and a friend to school and they won't say a word to me for 30 minutes, but there's something about it that I'd look forward to doing that every morning. And I'm getting a lot more out of that.
It's really hard to be present in everything all day long unless you're just super intentional. But that presence, I'll give a funny story. When I first started insurance in 2007, I went into Bob Stone's office. Shout out Bob Stone, neighbor. And he was like, I got to prepare for this renewal. It was 8:30 in the morning. The renewal was at 11. It was 2.5 hours. And I kind of just sat there and I'm like watching what he's doing. And, he's probably in his 60s at the time. And I'm losing my mind. I'm 27 years old, used to running hard, Microsoft, MSN operations, taking tickets, doing things. He spent 2.5 hours arguably to maybe type a little bit and print something. And I'm like, what in the world? That is a 15-minute thing. And I'm like, why does it take so long? And now, I won't do anything if I don't have an hour. I won't even start. I need 10, 15 minutes to be thinking, maybe 20 about what's coming up to get my head in the right spot. I need time afterwards to process. It's so funny as you get older, you're like, yeah, I could have done that task in 15 minutes, but now I'm letting it soak in at a different level. And you can only do that so many times a day. And it's really hard to be super present and super thoughtful more than a handful of times a day. I love, you talk about Jeff Bezos. He's like, I'm not paying my top people to live in the present and to make a bunch of decisions. I want them to live in the future and they need to make, 1 to 2 big decisions a month. And that is the pace of life that I'm starting to get accustomed to is what I do has to be really thoughtful and really thought provoking. The last couple of months, it's been value proposition. It's it's a lot of time. It's in weird areas and pockets, but it's just when I am going to get into that mode, I need 2 or 3 hour blocks because it takes me a while to get back in it, spend a few hours in it, and then digest it and then spit it out. And so I don't know how this all ties back to grit because I think there is a level of preparedness that is important, for when you go into these situations of true grit. And it's been something that's been bothering me as far as, more in athletics in the kid phase than anything else. But I think it sends a message either way, depending on who you are.
I think we tie it back this way to close it out. It's there's two different, it's funny because we're at two sides of the pendulum, right? You've got the grit, which if you look at it from a traditional, from a I didn't even say new media, but current media perspective, grit is David Goggins, right? Grit is if you look at it, Chad Wright, this extreme, if you're not all in, full throttle, everything, burn it down. And then on the other side, we're talking about the beauty in thoughtfulness and letting things breathe. And it's unfortunate that a lot of times these two sides can't see each other, right? The 27-year-old, like you just said, looks at this side and they're like, loser. This guy's weak. He's not doing anything. He takes too much time. All of you see it professionally, right? All the internal strife around the perceived level of exertion that elevated executives are having. Oh, I'm sitting here working 40 hours a week, typing away, doing this, that, and they're, on the golf course. I think you can find without realizing that, look, everybody, for whatever reason, as we age in our 20s and 30s, we are wired to get all of that satisfaction and all of that self-worth out of how much we can accomplish and how well we can perform with our backs to the wall. And that's where we get it all. And as we age, we get it from this other side. And so it's I wish there was this transition there was this thing where they could see, look, yeah, you may think they haven't done anything, but they put all this time in just like you did. And now, for whatever reason, the spirit is desiring less of that, and it's okay. Yeah. It's just as cool on either side. So I think that kind of ties it together.
Yeah, it's I could extend this by 30 minutes just going into what are we doing? Like, what are we trying to accomplish? What is our goal here? That I think is another episode on another day, but I think a lot of it comes down to that. Are we trying to accumulate joy? Are we trying to accumulate moments? Are we trying to accumulate achievements? What's the balance? What's the, like, at the end of the day, I think that's the measure. Like, you look at a Jeff Bezos for 30 years, he probably was, I mean, he grinded. He was, I think, an investment banker maybe in his until like 30. And then he started Amazon. And, for 20 years, he probably ran extremely hard, and he's created, depending on how you look at it, he's certainly transformed e-commerce, right? And so, like, was it worth it? Is that good? Is that bad? He probably has, obviously, I think the relationships in his life suffered from that. That's fairly well documented, I believe. And you see that with a lot of people that have significant professional success in a spotlight. Whether that is, it could be a speaker, it could be a professional athlete, it could be a personality, or just a CEO of a large company. They dedicate the vast majority, they really narrow in on one particular thing and they excel at it. And a lot of times it's at the expense of balance in other areas of their life. And is that good or bad? I don't know. For me, parenting is very important. If I were to take all of my capacity, pour it into parenting, and have my kids grow up to be the best that they could be, like, is that? So I think for me, I think it's a complex question, and I think the right answer for some may be having a ton of space based on what they're trying to use this life for, and for others it might be different.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good bow. It's we're all different. God made us all different, and we're all going to value things differently. I have a friend that just quit his job to homeschool his kids. He makes 7 figures. I'm out, because he values that time with his kids and his family. So yeah, I think you're 100% right. Our value systems are different, as well as I think our value systems change as we get older. And we're starting to see that. So yeah, that took a little bit of a turn, but really good discussion. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks.